Can Chef's squad finish out the regular season strong?
Will Hokies softball will be able to secure home field advantage for the regionals?
And what Hokies will continue their football careers in the NFL level?
We've got you covered on all of that on this week's edition of the 3304 First Pitch Show. Welcome in, everybody, to the fantastic Moss Arts Center here from Blacksburg, Virginia. I'm Landon Weaver. He's Pearce Mcknight. Pearce, how was your Easter weekend?
It was a pretty good weekend, and then I had a great time last night on Riley's Red Zone. Now, it wasn't as great for the Hokies. They had an Easter egg hunt, and they had a good time, but seemed to drop a few eggs and lose a few pieces of candy.
Yeah, and we'll start on that with softball. We saw them drop a series to Pitt, and now they go to Cal. They are 37-7, the Hokies, 15-3 in conference play, and second in the ACC, but they need to win this one.
For sure, and this Cal team's a very gritty team, if you will. Not flashy, but know how to string some wins together. Now, they're 31-16, 7-11 in the ACC. A good amount of their wins were against notable teams in the non-conference, most of them being in the Power Four. So this team can take care of business against teams that they should win. I expect the Cal maybe to win at least one game against the Hokies, but the Hokies are going to have to be on top of it, especially after losing 2 games to Pitt last week.
Yeah, 2 games to Pitt is not something the Hokies were wanting. They were riding a 17-game win streak before they dropped the first game, came back to win the second game 21-0. A West Coast trip is also hard to combat. You think about the time zone differences. So it should have been a win last weekend. Hopefully a win this weekend for the Hokies as they get back to winning ways.
It was an interesting weekend. It might have been actually a fluke for the Hokies. Simply, you cannot have this again. You cannot lose to another team that's not that notable in the ACC. They got to take care of business this week. The Maroon and Orange, I expect, are going to be angry coming into this weekend in Cal Berkeley.
Yep. You got to wonder, will they have a fire in their gut? The Hokies down at Tech Softball Park are going to need one if they want a home field advantage going into the postseason. For more on the upcoming series and an up-to-date picture on the ACC, here's our very own Thomas Hughes.
For the first time in over a month, Virginia Tech softball lost a game. And for the first time all season, the Hokies lost an ACC series. Number 11 Tech dropped 2 of 3 at Pitt over the weekend, opening with a 9-inning slugfest loss on Thursday and ending with a late collapse in Friday's finale. But in between came one of the most dominant, record-setting performances in program history. After dropping Game 1 in extra innings, Virginia Tech unloaded on Friday afternoon, torching Pitt 21-0 in a 5-inning Mercy Rule win. The Hokies hit 11 home runs, yes, 11, setting both new program and ACC single-game records in the process. Every inning saw crooked numbers, and every swing seemed to leave the yard. Corey McMillan headlined the onslaught. The senior right fielder launched 3 homers, including a solo shot in the first, another in the fourth, and one more in the fifth, pushing her season total to 23. The most in the nation. It also broke the single-season program record for homers, a record which she already broke last season. Michelle Chatfield mashed a grand slam in the second and finished 3 for 5 with 4 RBIs. Nora Abramovich joined the party late with a pinch-hit grand slam in the fifth. By the time it was over, 9 different Hokies had gone deep, and the team totaled 18 hits and 21 runs. Cassie Grizzard earned the win in relief, tossing 2.2 innings of one-hit ball to finish the shutout. The Hokies held Pitt to just 2 hits and didn't commit an error, a stark contrast to their mistakes in the games that bookended the series. Because in the rubber match later on Friday, Virginia Tech couldn't replicate the dominance. Down 2-0 entering the 6th, the Hokies briefly flipped the script with one big swing, courtesy of Chatfield again. Her 3-run homer to center, following a Trinity Martin double and a McMillan reach on error, gave Tech a 3-2 lead and a flicker of momentum, but it didn't last. Pitt struck back in the bottom of the inning, scoring 4 times off 3 Virginia Tech pitchers. A sacrifice fly tied the game, a wild pitch gave the Panthers the lead, and then catcher KK Esparza hammered a solo homer to extend it. When the dust settled, Pitt had turned a 1-run deficit into a 6-3 win. Hokies ace Emma Lemley allowed 5 earned runs on 6 hits over 5.2 innings and exited after a wild 6th unraveled. A pair of relievers couldn't stop the bleeding, and the Hokies' late bats came up empty in the 7th. So despite outscoring Pitt 30-13 across the weekend, Virginia Tech left Pittsburgh with a series loss. Now 37-7 overall and 15-3 in the ACC, the Hokies remain near the top of the conference standings. But with number 7 Florida State looming and Cal on deck, the margin for error is gone. Tech travels west for a non-conference tune-up at Cal, beginning tonight in Berkeley. The 3-game series is one final chance to recalibrate before the Seminoles arrive on Blacksburg on May 2. With FSU holding a 14-1 lead mark, that series could decide the regular season title. The Hokies showed this weekend that they can be the most dangerous lineup in the country when they're on their A-game. But to make a deep postseason run and to take down a heavyweight like Florida State, they'll need more than power. They'll need poise when the game tightens, execution when the arms tire, and a short memory when the game doesn't break their way. They'll have a chance to prove it tonight, starting against the Golden Pears.
Well done, Thomas. And Pearce, let's talk about the other team on the diamond, Hokies baseball. Chef Squad, they got some big games coming up.
Yeah, for sure. They have some notable series left to go. They got Duke, and then they got Pitt, who's the worst team in the ACC, and then a mediocre UVA squad. So they got to string some wins together. They've swept one team in a series this year, and then also got swept once. They need to take care of business these next few series.
Yeah, and it looks like it's good teams to do it against. Obviously, Duke and UVA, they're going to be a little bit of a tough task, very similar to Virginia Tech in the standings, and the Pitt, as you mentioned, bottom of the barrel, and they got to win that one.
For sure, and it's going to be a fun Duke series. And then let's talk about UNC real quick. It was a fun series. The first game, a little bit boring. UNC took care of business throughout the entire game. Game 2, Hokies bounced back. A lot of words were spoken to both sides.
Yeah.
It was a fun game. And then Game 3, we got to talk about the errors and the pitching for Virginia Tech. They were down 2 of their starters, but it was a rocky game for them. 3 errors actually in the 7th inning alone.
Yeah, and then when you think about the pitching, I know in the first game they shuffled through maybe 6 or 7 pitchers. In the second game they had 10 pitchers. You just can't do that. You're not going to win if you don't have anybody consistent on the mound.
Way too many pitchers for the Hokies. Now, new teams and new formats will be introduced for the ACC this year. It should be a fun time in Durham, North Carolina. For more of the breakdown on the new bracketology, it's our Mr. Hayden Tolbert.
The ACC baseball tournament is just less than a month away, and this year it's getting a fresh new look. The league is ditching pool play and going full bracket style, bringing a little bit of March Madness energy to the diamond in May. Here how it works. The top 8 seeds get a bye. The top 4 earn a double bye, meaning 2 days off and straight into the quarterfinals, and the next 4 get a single bye with just 1 day off before they hit the field. With only 1 or 2 series making the difference in 13 out of 16 teams, Virginia Tech is in the middle of the pack and in the running for one of those top 8 spots. Currently sitting 10th in the standings, the Hokies had been building momentum mid-season but hit a little bit of a rough patch with back-to-back series losses to national powers Florida State and North Carolina. And with 3 conference series left to go, the Hammerin' Hokies need to be on point when it matters most. They will be on the road in Durham this weekend to take on the Blue Devils, where they are far above the Hokies in the standings. If they can pull that series out, they'll have a more favorable series on the road against the worst team in the conference in the Pitt Panthers, where it will be a must-sweep series. And in their final ACC series, the icing on the cake is the Commonwealth Clash against a very good but very disappointing Virginia Cavaliers team, where I'm sure Hokie Nation will be in full support in a home series that is a higher implications than just an in-state rivalry. Now, if the Hokies can go all in and win all 3 series remaining and handle business in their midweek matchup, they'll be right in the mix for a top 8 seed and an all-important bye. And as the great Vince Lombardi once said, you never win a game unless you beat the guy in front of you. For Virginia Tech, it's time to take care of business and not rely on anyone else, because that bye means something. In a tournament where pitching depth gets tested and every game's a battle, avoiding that early matchup could be the difference between a quick exit and a championship run. Back to you guys.
Great job. Let's have a little bit of fun and talk about the all-time Hokies who were drafted. And I'll start. The Edmond brothers, great from Bud Foster's team, both first-round draft picks, and actually the last 2 players from that defense of Bud Foster, it was his last 2 players that were drafted. Let's say that.
No, fantastic players they were, and you had someone else on the Fuller brothers.
Yeah, the Fuller brothers. You got Kyle and Kendall. Kyle was drafted in the first round, middle of the Bud Foster's defensive coordinating job, and then you had Kendall, who dropped at the 3rd round. Great pickup as well. It was a great 2 sets of brothers that were at the Hokies team with Bud Foster.
Yeah, you got to love the brothers. Both great for Virginia Tech. You got to wonder, when are we going to see another set? I have the only two number 1 overall picks for Virginia Tech, of course, Mike Vick and Bruce Smith. The 7.57 boys enjoyed great success on the field here in Blacksburg. Both were All-Americans, and Vick finished 3rd in Heisman voting and was a standout freshman en route to the national championship game against Florida State. Almost had it, put up a valiant effort for 3 quarters. But in the pros, I think Smith enjoyed greater success. 4 consecutive Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills. Unfortunately, couldn't come out on top on any of them. Vick is a really good what-if story. If he hadn't gotten into trouble with the law, you got to wonder, would he have been able to make those records that he has uncatchable if he'd stayed in the NFL.
Speaking of what if with Michael Vick, he's coaching now at Norfolk State. Maybe he could come back to the Hokies at some point and be a head coach here. Now, let's switch off and let's talk about some other names. We can't get into it too much, but there were some other Hokies, like Cam Chancellor was one big name that we didn't talk about, and we don't have enough time to talk about more of them. But there's a lot of names from this Hokie squad who have been drafted in the NFL.
While it's a good fireside chat to look back on the NFL success a college has provided, it's even more of a good time to look ahead and see who will be a future star in the NFL. And Virginia Tech certainly has some options to choose from. For more on a Day 2 and 3 draft preview, we go to Thomas Hallett. Thomas?
There are many satisfying sounds in sports. The crack of a bat, the popping of the catcher's mitt, the swish of the net, and the cracking of the pads. But that iconic sound has welcomed college prospects to the big leagues for decades. Last night kicked off the 2025 NFL Draft, and those harmonious bells delivered 32 collegiate players their dreams, with many more to go over the next 2 days. Rounds 2 and 3 will be held tonight, and rounds 4 through 7 will be held on Saturday. And in those 6 rounds, there are several Hokies looking to punch their tickets to the NFL. We'll start with Jalen Lane, who, according to ESPN, is the 73rd ranked player overall in the draft. Now, on paper, Lane doesn't necessarily stand out statistically, but after a stellar Senior Bowl and Combine, Lane is looking to go late Day 2. Now, helping his draft profile along with his receiving skills is his ability to return punts and kicks. Any team searching for a 4th or 5th receiver on the depth chart that can take on return duties will likely be looking Lane's way. The next highest ranked players are Bashaw Tootin at 131 and Dorian Strong at 134. Tootin had a breakout campaign in his senior season despite battling injuries throughout. Now, Tootin backed up his play in the Combine where he ran the fastest 40-yard dash, the fastest 10-yard split, and had the best vertical jump at his position. Now, one thing holding Tootin back is the fact that this is a generationally deep running back class that will yield many starters for years to come. Will Tootin be one of them? He certainly could, with his unique blend of power and speed, but that is an archetype widely shared in this class. Now, Strong may be ranked at 134th, but he is ranked 15th among other corners. His physical press coverage ability and great ball skills could lead to him going several picks ahead of schedule, especially with how valuable the cornerback position is. Aeneas Peebles and Antoine Powell-Ryland are also hunting a Day 2 selection, but these guys will likely be early to mid-Day 3 picks. Peebles is a bit undersized at defensive tackle, but he has a knack for rushing the quarterback, and he can also stop the run efficiently. Peebles' balance makes him a valuable prospect in the later rounds. Powell-Ryland, on the other hand, is a bit more one-dimensional. While he has shown an ability to be a strong run defender, his bread and butter is putting the opposing quarterback in the turf. His excellent pass rush ability will get him many looks in the later rounds, especially from teams that need depth at edge. We wish our Hokies luck over the next 2 nights for their NFL dreams to become a reality. Landon, back to you.
Thanks, Thomas. Now, Pearce, who do you think will be off the board first for the Hokies?
Now, I'm a little biased. Bashaw Tootin's my guy. I did a lot of reports for him. But the only downside of his game is his injuries. He did a great job running the 40. I think he was the highest running back with the fastest time. Now, what about you? Who do you think?
I really like Lane. Obviously, I like Tootin. He had a fantastic season. Who can forget the Boston College game, right? School record and 4 touchdowns on the day. But Lane, I think whoever gets him, he's going to be in the end zone a lot for him. A good down-the-field threat in open space and on special teams, punt returns. Who else is going to stop him?
He can really do it all. Now, that will be all that she wrote for us. Well, we'll tune in for a great weekend on the Diamond, whether that's in Berkeley or Durham. And you can't forget about the Hokies getting drafted in the NFL. But that's all we have here in the Moss Arts Center. For our reporters, Thomas Hughes, Hayden Tolbert, and Thomas Hallett, I'm Pearce Mcknight, and that is Landon Weaver. We will see you next week on the 3304 Sports First Pitch Show.